You are welcome, welcome, welcome today to Strive Recovery Academy. You are so welcome. Can you hear me? Welcome, welcome, welcome today to Strive Recovery Academy. Yes, today we're going to be talking about something really, really interesting, something that people hardly talk about, the silent trauma behind addiction nobody talks about. What is that particular trauma that is behind addiction? Let me say something that many people struggling with addiction have never heard before. It started with pain, pain that was never processed, pain that was never validated, pain that was never understood. And because that pain was never addressed, it had to find a way out. Many people that struggle, many people that struggle with addiction always find that there is an outlet that have become an addiction. That addiction that could be alcohol, that addiction that could be drugs, that addiction that could be prescription medication, that addiction that could be food, that addiction can even be you playing with your phone, that addiction that could be work, that addiction, even social addiction, social media is a form of addiction. What looks like addiction on the outside is often unresolved trauma on the inside. I'll say that again. What looks like addiction on the outside often looks like often as unresolved trauma on the inside. Today we are talking about the silent trauma behind addiction that nobody talks about. Because when we only treat addiction but ignores the trauma, recovery becomes much harder. And if you are new here, my name is Nurse Obi. I'm a mental health and addiction recovery advocate. And today on this channel, we talk about mental health, we talk about addiction recovery, we talk about emotional healing and rebuilding identity after trauma. If this content sounds like something that you really, really love, or you know of somebody who is going through one form of addiction or the other, you can share this content and invite that person. Thank you so much. Sometimes addiction could be a painkiller for emotional wounds. Many people assume that addiction becomes, it begins with curiosity or bad decision. But for many individuals, addiction begins with emotional pain. That pain that feels too overwhelming to carry. That trauma that doesn't always look like dramatic life events. Sometimes trauma looks like growing up in a home where emotions were ignored, being constantly criticized, feeling unsafe in your own environment because anything you do, people will always see a negative outcome behind it. Or you are experiencing abandonment, living through chronic stress, chronic illnesses, or feeling invisible where you need to be visible. All this can pile up. When a person does not have healthy tools to process emotional pain, the brain searches for relief. The brain searches for that survival mode. It searches for that survival tool it can use. And sometimes, often, provide temporary relief. Yes, People find out that when they take substance, they are relieved. But that relief is just temporary. Alcohol slows the nervous system down. Some people, after taking alcohol, they want to sleep. Their brain wants to be in that quiet, calm, I'll call it calm form. This nervous system is very slow. Drugs create dopamine spike. Even prescription medicine numbs emotional discomfort. For a moment, the pain quiets down, but the trauma underneath that pain becomes unresolved. So, the brain is relying on that substance to regulate its emotional distress. That is how trauma and addiction becomes intertwined. Are we getting something today? Are we getting something today? Trauma becomes intertwined because when you're looking for relief for emotional stress, you go take something or you go do something that you think you love, but never knowing that that thing could be detrimental to the brain. Trauma can change the brain processes. It can change how the brain processes events. Trauma does not only affect emotion, it affects biology. It affects your build-up, your genetic build-up, yes. When someone experiences chronic stress or trauma, the brain alert system, the brain gateway, the brain alarm system becomes overreactive. That guard, that safeguard, that security that you have becomes overreactive. The amygdala becomes hyper alert. The nervous system becomes sensitive to passive threats. He feels he's been threatened, and as such, he becomes really, really sensitive. The body lives in a constant state of survival. They are always in a fight mode, or a flight mode, or even a freeze mode. That's how the brain is. When the brain is stuck on survival mode, emotional regulation becomes very, very difficult. Small stresses or small stressors can feel overwhelming. It can trigger us, and when there are triggers, it feels intense. And substances or drugs or alcohol or even your phone can become a way to escape that constant tension. So addiction is often less about pleasure and more about relief. It could be relief from anxiety. It could be relief from memories. It could be relief from childhood trauma. It could be relief of being invisible. It could be relief from emotional overload. This is why simple telling someone to just stop rarely works, because the addiction is not the root of the problem. Trauma is actually the root of that problem. So most times I've noticed that people, they hardly treat the root of the problem. Instead, they treat the substance. But the truth is, substance is not the root of the problem. It's the trauma. One of the reasons trauma behind addiction goes unnoticed is because many people don't recognize their own trauma. Many people do not recognize their own trauma. They say things like, my childhood wasn't that bad. My parents were the best parents ever. Or my environment was the environment that anybody can live in without going through stress. Other people had it worse. But trauma is not measured by comparison. Trauma is measured by how the experience impacts the nervous system. How does your experience, or how did your experience has affected your nervous system is how trauma is being measured. A child who constantly feels rejected may develop deep emotional wounds. A teenager who feels isolated may carry unresolved loneliness. He feels or she feels she's not loved, and as such, she may develop loneliness. An adult who experiences betrayal may struggle with trust for many years. Some people hardly trust people, but most times you will think, oh, it's just because he doesn't trust people. The truth is, there's a trauma behind that trust. There is a trauma, or there's a story behind that trust. And that story could be trauma. This wound often stays hidden, but the body remembers it. The body remembers these wounds. And the brain searches the ways to cope. That's why the brain is always in a survival mode. That's why when you are telling a child, give me this cup, and the child said, no, mom, I can't give you. You get angry and you start yelling. Why won't you give me this cup? Why won't you do this? It's trauma. These are emotional trauma that really we don't know they exist, but they really exist. They exist. They are hidden traumas. Sometimes the coping mechanism becomes addiction. That coping mechanism becomes an addiction. Another silent force behind addiction is shame. Shame tells people you are the problem. Oh, you are the problem. This is happening. You are the problem. Your brother will not do this. You are the problem. You are doing this. You are the problem. You are doing problem. 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 You are shaming that individual. You are shaming your child. You are shaming your friend. You are weak. Even telling somebody you are weak is a result of you are shaming that person. Oh, you ruined everything. You are shaming that person. Shame isolates people. Shame again isolates people. And isolation fuels addiction. Isolation fuels addiction. When people feel deeply ashamed, they may avoid seeking help. They may hide their struggles. They may believe they are beyond redemption. But healing begins when shame is replaced with understanding. Healing begins when shame is replaced with understanding. When people begin to see that addiction was often a response to an unresolved pain, comparison can begin. Comparison can begin from people when they compare themselves, but you can replace it with compassion. You can replace it with empathy. Compassion does not excuse harmful behavior. Empathy does not confuse harmful behavior, but what does it do? It creates the foundation for healing. It creates what? The foundation for healing. When you have compassion and when you have empathy towards somebody who is going through addiction, it creates a foundation for healing. There is a powerful story in the gospel, in the Bible, that reflects how unseen pain can shape behavior. If you remember very well, in the Bible, in John, the Samaritan woman at the well, when Jesus met her, when Jesus met this woman, he reveals that she had multiple broken relationships and she was currently living with someone who was not her husband. In that culture, she was likely to be judged and rejected by the society. But instead, what did Jesus do? Instead of condemning her, Jesus spoke to her deeply. He spoke to her deep issues and not just the surface issue. He recognized the taste behind her behavior. He recognized the taste behind her behavior. He tells her about living water, a source of healing that satisfies the deeper than temporary relief. The deeper relief than temporary relief. Do you know what stand out for me from that story? Jesus didn't shame that lady. He sees her pain. He acknowledged her stories. What did he do again? He offered restoration. This reminds us what Jesus did to that lady at the well reminds us that behind every behavior, people are judged with, there is often a deeper wound that needs healing. And healing begins when that wound is seen and when that wound is addressed. Yes. So we should stop looking at people from the surface. Look at the reason why they are doing that thing. Recovery becomes more sustained when trauma is addressed alongside addiction. Healing often includes therapy and trauma-informed counseling. Learning emotional regulation is also very important. You have to develop healthy coping strategies. You have to develop healthy coping strategies and create a network. You have to build supportive network, supportive relationship, because you cannot heal by yourself. You have to practice compassion. You have to practice empathy. Trauma healing is not a quick fix. It's not a quick fix. It takes time. And with slow, consistent action, healing begins to happen. But it is possible. It is possible. And when trauma begins to heal, the need for unhealthy coping mechanisms often decrease. And because the pain that fuels addiction is finally being processed, now healing begins. Healing begins. If you are someone who has been struggling with addiction, or if you are someone who has struggled with addiction, I want you to hear this clearly. Your addiction does not define your worth, and your past does not disqualify you from healing. And the pain that contributed to your struggle does not have to control your future. No, it does not. Healing is possible. Recovery is possible. And rebuilding your life is possible. If this message spoke to you in one way or the other, please comment below. Healing begins. Healing begins. Healing begins. If you know someone struggling with addiction, share this video with them. Like, comment, and sometimes the first step towards healing or towards recovery is understanding the pain behind the struggle. And if you want more content on this, mental health and trauma recovery, rebuilding life after addiction, subscribe to this channel and join the community. Thank you so much for having me. I will see you in the next one. Thank you and God bless you.